SHTURMAN can be one of the most annoying bosses that you have to fight on Escape from Tarkov PVE mode, but he's not necessarily the hardest, and in fact is probably one of the easier bosses once you know what you need to do. And that is what this video is going to highlight, some of the ways that I take out SHTURMAN when I'm trying to complete my task. Before we get into this video, if you want to see some more Escape from Tarkov PVE content and you find these videos helpful, then be sure to like and subscribe down below. And with that out the way, let's get into it. So let's actually jump in. Before we get into how to actually take him out in the gameplay portion, let's talk about the actual setup that you're going to need. So straight out of the bat, we have a sniper rifle. Sniper rifle is very, very good for taking out SHTURMAN, because if you, for example, can get far enough away that you're outside of his aggro range, you can take him out so easily. He doesn't aggro you, and he doesn't have an insanely huge aggro circle. Oftentimes you'll actually know when you're within his aggro circle, because he'll start shooting in the air essentially, and that is kind of how you know that someone's either near him or it's you personally that has kind of aggroed him. In terms of scope, we obviously have a wide variety within Tarkov. I'm not going to tell you exactly which one that you should be using, because most of the time it's just personal preference, but one that has a decent nominal zoom, something like the TAC 30, something like this. You know, you don't have to use this specific one, but anything like that, the Voodoo, the Razor, and these sorts of scopes, very, very useful, and of course a nice way of taking out the boss. But when it comes to being even better for especially playing woods, I would actually take in a FLIR. Now the FLIR, very weird situation with regards to this, but the FLIR itself, what it does is it essentially allows you to locate where exactly he is, and if you've got a task specifically to take out SHTURMAN with a certain weapon, you can swap back to that weapon, now knowing the location of where he is, alongside where the goons are. You can also, when you're going through the map, you're just scanning over the place to see exactly where those people are, and the FLIR does a really brilliant job of being able to do that. Of course, any thermal scope is fine. You just want it purely to find out where people are and where to be aware of when you're going through, especially on the boss. It makes it so much easier for you to like guarantee nearly every single raid to get out of there, and this sort of thing. Definitely a must when it comes to it, but we'll do a specific video on why this is the best either way. So then we of course go on to the ammunition, and I guess we'll talk about the AS-VAL. Why have we got it in here? Well, the AS-VAL is a very, very good weapon at very close ranges, which is where you can come into quite a bit of trouble with SHTURMAN, because what you need to do is go in to where SHTURMAN is located, sometimes to pick up his key for various different quests, the SHTURMAN stash key. It'll be in his pockets or on him in his backpack. And so once you get that, you know, you want to extract it or whatever, you might need a closer weapon, as well as the fact that maybe you haven't taken out SHTURMAN, but he's kind of hiding somewhere. You can use nades to get him out of that location, but you also might want to use a close quarters gun in those engagements, and something that has high damage is very, very useful. And talking about damage, let's talk about the ammunition that we're using in this, because SHTURMAN himself only has 62 hit points in the head, which means that most ammunition from most weapons is more than enough to deal with him. Now, we could make an argument that maybe you want to use a 7.62 MDR, which is absolutely fine. It's a perfectly reasonable choice. I just really like the AS-VAL, so it's kind of personal preference in that regard, but making sure that you have ammunition that is going to be able to deal over 62 damage. If you want to one tap him in the head, it's kind of what you want. And anything over like 60 damage will mean you'll 3-shot the boss, so in the chest, because he has no armor. I think he has 180 hit points in the thorax, so yeah, quite easy to actually take him out either way if you just mag dump him. And so the boss, really not too difficult. The only thing that you have to be aware of is if he aggroes you and you have no idea where he is, which is where the FLIR comes in handy, and you can pop out and scan the area and that sort of thing. So ammo wise, we've got M62 Tracer. This is just so that we can see. We want to have those tracing rounds so we can actually see whereabouts our shots are landing if we're using a sniper, for example. We've got the SP5 just because it has 71 damage, and we don't really need the actual penetration when we're going up against SHTURMAN himself for the AS-VAL. And then of course the 7.62x51 MDR, we'll just use M80, M62, whatever you want to use, provided that it has decent damage and can go through the bosses and his guard's armor. But let's jump into the location and have a look at that. Now then, the first location that I will go to is up by the duffel bag on the rock area. This gives you a good overview of the map. And essentially gives you kind of that side profile of the whole sawmill, and so it's really easy to spot where people are and essentially just take them out from there. But of course, what you need to be aware of is SHTURMAN can target you, and you can also get flanked by PMCs that do come through the forest from behind you, so just be aware of it. Doesn't really happen too often, but it can happen, so I wanted to make you aware of it if you're playing in the PvE mode. But you also then have guards that can push up to your left of the rock. Yeah, if you do take out SHTURMAN or you aggro them, they can push up to your left. Usually the boss and his guards don't really push you. It's only if they're in the building directly to your left of where the rock is. But then we'll go on to the next spot. We have essentially the big rock. Now the big rock gives you a good overview all the way down the whole sawmill, and essentially from there you can just see everything. You don't really need a whole lot of input. There's nothing that really stops you when you're up here. The only thing is if you aggro, the guards can push you whilst you're actually on top of the rock, and that is really it. There's nothing really to say about actual SHTURMAN. And maybe you want to actually push down into the sawmill, you don't want to use a sniper rifle, and that way you can basically go inside of the little shed, and once you're in there he will push into the shed, and as long as you got a decent weapon to begin with, you should be fine. But that's just an additional extra. So with that being said, pretty simple self-explanatory explanation as to what the boss is like and what you can do and the sorts of things that I do when I need to take him out, and especially if you're going for those 20 SHTURMAN kills for one of the tasks. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and like the video, and I will see you in the next one.